Hey, Southeast Missouri sports fans. Enjoy the show and want to take it on the go? You can find every episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or YouTube. Tune in as they air by searching SEMO Sports Zone wherever you may be listening. Okay, welcome to the SEMO Sports Zone. We are starting basketball this season. We thank you for your patience with the hiatus we took last week. A few things happened, I would say, but Dave, how are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine. We got two guys here with some big smiles on our faces after some college football results this weekend.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but it is great to be a Michigan Wolverine.
It's great to be a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan right now, too. We're going to be in some playoffs, and, it's about time we plant the flag on this football season, don't you think?
Yeah, let's go ahead and wrap up football for a second because we didn't tune in last week, but we did catch most of the games that pertain to us. Everything in District 1. District 1 is now out of the football season. But you know what? I mean, all around, I think it was a great season for Southeast Missouri.
Yeah, it was. It was, we had some really good teams. Some teams had some really good years. I went to the Dexter quarterfinal game. It's a tough way to end the season the way it was for Dexter, but a great season nonetheless. I mean, you tied the school record for wins. You set the record for points scored. Just a really, really nice season for them. And it just kind of, I think sometimes it just kind of shows that the football here in Southeast Missouri is not the same football that's being played throughout the rest of the state. And I mean, it's good football, but it's just not. I mean, some of the other, some of these other schools around the state. I mean, Lift for Life just got hammered yesterday by Seneca, and Seneca's probably going to, take it on the chin to Blair Oaks in the championship game. So it just kind of shows the disparity between our teams here and everywhere else. But that surely doesn't, put a damper on what kind of season they had. There would be some great memories for a lot of fans and players that in Dexter, Jackson, and a lot of schools around here.
Yeah, I mean, you can't hang your head over how the season turned out because, it's the first time something like this has happened since 1986. So, take that for what it is, that you had a monumental season, and it's just great to see that, fans brought the enthusiasm. I haven't seen that much fan enthusiasm since I was in school, anything like that. So to come into the season with the mindset that we're going to play probably about the same game that we did last year, and then just blow out all your expectations. I mean, that's pretty awesome for a little town in Class 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And kudos to the fans, too. Like I said, I went up to that game, and they filled that Melville Stadium. As a matter of fact, the Lift for Life school resource officer was trying to move Dexter fans from a section that we were in because to make room for some of the Lift for Life fans who hadn't shown up yet. And, when all 15 of them did show up, they had a seat. But Dexter, they brought the entire town. The announcer even said it before the game. It was just and Jackson does the same thing every time they play. I've seen, Sykeston, whenever they had their good run, years ago, they did the same thing. And it's fun to see those communities come together like that. And, it's something that, these fans are going to remember for a long time. I remember back in 86 and 87, whenever Dexter had their really good teams, I can remember that. I was 12, 13 years old. And you can remember that for forever. And so this is something that'll stick with them for a long time. And it's just it was a fun year. And, I'm sure those kids are glad to be a part of it.
Yeah. And just to kind of put a pin on it, St. Vincent, they also had a dominant year. Mm-hmm. They fell to the wayside too. But, don't hang your head on that either. St. Vincent's obviously an amazing program, especially in this area.
Yeah, that Adrian team's really good. They beat the defending state champs by 1 point last week in the quarterfinals. I guess it was a district championship for them, but it was still a very good year for St. Vincent. They thought they had the year that they could get another state title. They got one in 2003 or 4, and I remember that little run they had. But they were a good team, and Valley, they got knocked out, which is kind of surprising that they got knocked out the way they did. And there was a lot of local teams here that just didn't make it as far as they thought they would, I think. But at the same time, it's just a really good year for a lot of teams. And I'm already kind of looking to next year, see what some of these teams have and see who they're going to bring back. We've already had a couple coaching changes. I know Portageville is looking for a coach. Kennett's looking for a coach. I think there's going to be another one or two that is going to be looking. So, we're kind of that season now where, you kind of just looking toward next year.
Yeah, and good teams, they reload. So the teams that are losing seniors, what are they going to bring back to the table next year? That's always an exciting prospect to come back to.
Yeah, and I saw some things online from some people about, Dexter's, they're going to be like Kennett next year when they lose all these 18 seniors. And I don't think so at all. They've got some younger guys that are back that are going to be really good players. They had some other guys that kind of stepped up in roles when other people got hurt. I'm not saying that Dexter's going to go 9-0 in the regular season next year, but I think they're still going to be a pretty good team. You look at some other teams, I think that are going to get better as well. But that just kind of stuck out to me after they lost to Lift for Life. I saw some things on social media about Dexter's done. I don't know about that. I think I would not sleep on this Dexter team next year. I think they're going to have some good guys returning.
I can just say from a personal perspective, losing a lot of your starters from your team and then coming back and upsetting people who think they're going to beat you by a dominant amount, that feels pretty good too. So, hey, bulletin board for the rest of the teams in Southeast Missouri, but I wouldn't count Dexter out next year either.
Maybe they can plant their flag on some fields around here.
Dave, I don't know if you know this, but basketball season has started in Southeast Missouri. And there have been some district shakeups, things like that. Do you mind kind of touching on some of that?
No, I think the biggest surprise for a lot of people around here is Charleston dropped down to Class 2. And, of course, in Class 2, you get dropped into the Puxico district, which is maybe the best small school around here. Mm-hmm. And that, I still think Puxico is a better team than Charleston. Now, that being said, I've thought that before whenever Charleston goes into districts with a 500 record. I mean, I'm going to go back a little ways, but back in 2000, Dexter had a really, really good basketball team. I think they were 26-1 going into districts. They met up with Charleston, who was around 500, and they got beat by Charleston in the district and upset. And it just kind of ruined that season for Dexter, who probably that team had the best chance of any Dexter team that in my lifetime that had a chance to win a state title. And they lost to Charleston because Charleston is so. Their season, they play the SEMO conference. They are just, they're battling each and every night against really, really good teams. It's really tough for Puxico to match that type of schedule. And they played Chadwick, Puxico did over the weekend, and they won that game. That's a great game for them. That's a game that'll help them. But you're playing it in November. How much do you learn from that in February? It's that's one of those things that Charleston is just they're just so challenged all year long that when it comes district time, they're primed.
Yeah, it's always funny to think about because when you look at just box scores and things like that, Charleston always seems for the past couple of years especially, they've seemed down. But at the same time, like you said, strength of schedule, things like that, they always play just really hard teams like that. They're not favored to win, but you can feel like it's building that grittiness to them. And, to go back a couple years and kind of retain your dominance, that's a hard thing to do. We're kind of seeing it with a couple teams losing big pieces. New Madrid, I feel like, is in a very similar state right now. We're in this quasi-rebuild phase, and we'll touch on how they did during the Riverbend in a minute. But, for Charleston going up against Puxico, that's going to be a task regardless. But I don't feel like Puxico's got it as much in the bag as I feel like their community thinks they do.
Yeah, and Puxico is very good, though. They're very good, but Class 2 is just tough this year. South Iron moves up from Class 1 to Class 2, and they've kind of ran Class 1 the last decade. They've been there every year in the Final Four, it seems like, and won several state titles. And then you look in Class 2, District 1, you've got South Pemiscot, who beat Puxico last year in the quarterfinals and made it to the Final Four, and they have everybody back. And Campbell, they didn't look too bad in the Riverbend. And then you have Hayti, who's got a couple new players and mixed with some of their older players. They're very young, but they are very talented. And so, Class 2 is going to be really, really tough around the area. It is loaded. And anybody who comes out of Class 2 from this area is going to have a chance to win a state title.
Yeah, and that's kind of just been, what everybody's been saying is like, how did Class 2 get so stacked? And I mean, transferring between these, like Charleston coming in, Hayti just starting to find its own too. I mean, like you said, the players that are coming in and the speed that they're bringing and everything like that. Yeah, I've even heard people say it's like they're having dominant performances and they're not happy with that. So, just the competitive level that Class 2 is at right now, that's exciting to see.
Yeah, it seems like every year there's one class that's just really loaded. For a while it was Class 3, and you had like a Charleston and a New Madrid who were just really dominant, and this year it's Class 2, so it's going to be Class 2 is going to be the fun one to watch this year. But there's going to be a lot of other good districts too. You look at Class 1, Risco. Got to be happy. You got moved out of the Richland district, so you can win a district title and match up with Richland in a sectional on a neutral site, and that ought to be fun. Assuming Richland gets through Class 1 District 2, but I think they're clearly the two best teams in those districts. And that's going to be a heck of a game, and the winner there probably goes to the Final Four, you would think, or at least I mean have a good chance to. So Class 1, I mean that's really tough. Class 3 though, Class 3 is kind of down this year. I mean, You look at Class 3 District 1, you've got New Madrid who's down, you've got East Prairie. They lost a few players from last year, but they're still. I mean, I think East Prairie may be the favorite in that district. That's a place that they've just never been in before. Mm-hmm. You got Crothersville in that district as well, who's going to have something to say about that. But I mean, that's a winnable district for an East Prairie who's never won a district title in their school history. And then you go to Class 3, District 2, and you've got Woodland and Scott City there. Both of them are going to be really good. I think Scott City is going to be really, really good this year.
Yeah, they had a pretty dominant performance in their first game of the season too. So, Class 3 might be down, but they're not overlooked either. Right now in this time, it's they're playing games, but it's still speculation season. I don't think speculation stops until after, probably into January. But just kind of what we gauged from yesterday too at the Riverbend, what I saw out of some teams was, it's this fledgling rebuild season that a lot of teams are having to go into. And, especially coming out of football seasons too, we talked about this yesterday, is that, you don't start to pick it up until later in December. What's kind of your thoughts on what we saw yesterday?
Pretty bad, honestly. Yeah. But it's young. They're young teams. Yeah. A lot of young teams just trying to kind of rebuild their program a little bit, and not with their full complement of players. You saw Malden missing a few players. You knew Madrid's missing a few players to injury and not being eligible or what have you. And those players are going to be coming back for New Madrid. I think that's going to really help them. But you did see some youth like Jalen Williams in New Madrid. I mean, you've got to be impressed with him as a freshman. He had double figures both games at the Riverbend, and is not, he does not lack confidence. He's going to the rim. I mean, you see a lot of areas he can improve. But you see New Madrid with all these freshmen, they're going to be able to get better. This is not going to be their year that they're going to win a state title. I mean, I don't think anybody's got any notions of them making a run all the way to state and winning a state championship. But at the same time, you can see the youth there that's going to develop in the next few years and have a really good chance in a couple of years to challenge for state titles. But it's just an unfortunate year for the Riverbend, where a lot of these local teams are just kind of rebuilding. Yeah. And, they just took it on the chin over the weekend. Yeah.
Southeast Missouri teams, 0-8. Kind of in total for what we played against. And, these teams from Arkansas and Tennessee, you can't really knock them for their play style, anything like that. It was a lot of just overpowering. You could see a lot of like taking advantage of lack of bench depth, things like that just kind of compounded. I don't feel like the Missouri teams played particularly bad in most areas. It's just that, death by 1,000 cuts, like these are just better teams and they just wear you down. But I do see that, this is a rebuild year for a lot of people. And you kind of have to take it for that, of just like be disappointed if you want to, but understand that like a lot of these teams are coming back.
Yeah, and like I said, New Madrid was missing some players, Malden was missing some players. You had Crothersville there who just got off the football field, and you could just tell that they weren't in basketball form yet. There were just some plays that just kind of just didn't look like what they would look like, just dribbling the ball off your foot in certain situations, and just some things that were not going to look the same, come January.
More aggression, less finesse is kind of what I saw out of that. What do you think the implications are for SEMO conference seedings? Because those are already out, and we didn't really get to see Charleston and New Madrid play. Do you think where they're seated at in the SEMO conference right now is correct, or do you think maybe another look should be taken at that?
I think they're okay. I mean, honestly, when I look at the SEMO conference tournament, I think the top 4 teams are the top 4 teams that I think we're kind of looking at to win that thing. I think everybody else you can just kind of put in a hat and just kind of pick out.
Sure.
And different nights, they may be different things. It would not shock me to see Dexter knock off Charleston on Tuesday night. Coming out of football, it's going to be a little bit tougher for Dexter because I'm sure that some of their guys have had no practice time really, with the exception of just the last week, and then you got a holiday in the middle of it, so it's kind of tough there. But at the same time, Charleston, they played football right up to almost the same time as Dexter. So, I mean, Dexter played one extra week. But that one extra week can give you a lot of extra practice. But, I mean, it would not shock me to see Dexter win that game. It would not shock me to see Charleston beat them by 20. I think it's just different. I mean, I think they're all kind of right there, 5 through 9. I think they're all kind of in there together.
So moving on past the Riverbend, we are covering the Orient Invitational for the first time. There's not a lot of teams that we really kind of speculate on where they're going to go in the season, but Richland is kind of the highlighter team in that championship. So do you think this, because Richland played Chadwick, lost to Chadwick by about 13 points, somewhere around there. Do you think like implications are that that's going to push Richland back, or do you think they're really going to show out?
No, I think this is Richland's tournament to win. I mean, or to lose, actually. I mean, they're not going to, I really don't, they are heads and tails above everybody else in this tournament. Now, it's also a good tournament to kind of get right. I mean, Chadwick's a really good team, and, you lost by, 13, 15 points, whatever it was. But it's not like you got blown out and, you weren't competitive. I mean, they were there, and they're going to have to get better, and they're going to, they're going to have plenty of opportunities. I think this Orient tournament's a good opportunity to do that. I think they're going to, like I said, going to be favored in every game. You just go in there and you just try to get right, and you try to get right for that Bloomfield Christmas tournament that's coming up. And because I know that they think that they got a chance to do something in that, and it's been a long time since they've kind of made that, kind of made some noise in that. So, I think they want to do, should kind of show up for the Bloomfield Christmas tournament. So you just kind of just get better, and losing to a team like Chadwick early, you got kind of see how you got to get to, what the level you got to get to, and I think that Richland is working toward that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because like the controversy online is that, Richland losing this game is that not to say like, oh, their whole season is like a wash, whatever, but people have kind of pegged them as not being that great of a team just because of this one game. And I just don't feel like you can do that because it's so early in the season. And even like, Puxico's a great team. They just beat Chadwick. Do you just say that Puxico's the best team in the state just because they won a game that Richland didn't? You just can't do that. It's so early in the season, and these teams are going to meet up eventually, and like that's exciting. That's an exciting prospect. But at the same time, like speculation, I feel like everybody has to ease off the gas a little bit.
Gotta love social media. It just breeds, things that you used to not be able to hear except maybe around the coffee shop in the mornings. Everybody reads, and it's just they're fans for a reason. They're fanatical, and you can't. One game is not and especially your first game of the year. You can't judge anything by the first game of the year. And oh my gosh, you lost to the defending state champion. Well, okay. I mean, where are we? Where's the pull the fire alarm? Okay. I mean, no, I don't think there's anything for Richland to be worried about. I mean, you're not trying to peak in November. You're trying to peak into February and 1st of March. That's when you're trying to peak. And so these teams are, look, I mean, these coaches aren't going to, they're not happy they lost, but they're not going to, lose their minds over losing one game in November. It's not it's not the end of the world, and they're going to be fine. Richland's got all 5 starters back. I know they got some younger players that they're trying to mix in as well with that group. They're going to help them. So, I think Richland's going to be just fine. They'll do just fine in this Orient tournament, and Coach Klein will have them going.
Kind of moving on, let's talk a little bit. I want to touch on Bloomfield just a little bit because their situation's a little interesting to me. They beat Greenville, who Greenville went out to just blow out Clarkton. Where do you put Bloomfield at in your like echelon of teams right now?
Just, an unknown, really.
Yeah.
Just in kind of an unknown. Coach Sindel did a really good job with them last year. And, so I'm not going to write them off as, oh, they're not that good. But at the same time, I don't know how good they really are. That's a team I'm going to have to see play a little bit because I don't know how good Greenville is. I don't know how good or bad Clarkton is. Mm-hmm. Some of these teams, they just kind of, I know Greenville lost a lot from last year. They've got a new coach in there, I believe. So it's it's tough to see how how they stack up this year. Maybe they're not very good. Maybe they're really good. I don't know. So you just kind of we make a lot of these assumptions early in the year about we did that in football season a little bit. Like, okay, well, this team lost to Team X lost to Team Y. And then all of a sudden we realized about mid-season, Team Y wasn't very good.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
But yeah, I mean, Bloomfield, Coach Sindel does a really good job with them, and I was really impressed with the job he did last year. And I like this, the style they play really fits them. Bloomfield's one of those teams with the style they play. They can beat anybody on any given night. The way that they kind of come to the game, they kind of slow it down a little bit. They're going to play good defense. So and it's not a style you see a lot of other teams play. So. I think Bloomfield's going to be fine, and we'll just see how good they are at the end.
It's interesting, too, because, we have to think about, we just talked about speculation, but at the same time, Bloomfield Christmas tournament's kind of where all these teams are kind of heading to. So we do have to acquiesce a little bit of speculation just because, these aren't inconsequential games for a lot of these teams, even if they seem it at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And every game right now is kind of impacting your seeding for that Bloomfield Christmas tournament, and some of these teams aren't too worried about where they're seated. Some of them are really worried about where they're seated. They want to get that better seed that they can. It's going to be a really good tournament. I mean, because good luck deciding how you're going to seed this thing, because there's a lot of good teams in this tournament this year. And that's going to be interesting to see how these teams fare up in the next couple of weeks before they have that seeding meeting.
Just kind of to move on to some of the bigger schools too, what's the situation going between the top four in the SEMO conference? Because we're looking at Sikeston, Jackson, Cape, and Notre Dame. You said you think Notre Dame looks really good this year.
Yeah, I think Notre Dame's going to be a lot better than what people think. They return all their players from last year. They got some guys that can really, really shoot it. Will Henry Stewart is back. He was injured last year, missed some time. And, Notre Dame really kind of came on at the end of the year, I thought, and looked really good. And they're just kind of building off that. I think Notre Dame is a team that's going to be really good this year. I think they're probably the favorite to win that Class 4 District 1. They're in there with Dexter and Donovan and Kennett. But I think Notre Dame's clearly the team to beat in that district. They're a team that I think could possibly give Sikeston some problems in a semifinal of the SEMO Conference tournament just because they shoot it so well. You saw against Vianney when Sikeston last year, they kind of had some issues when a team gets hot and can shoot it like that. It's really tough to it really kind of changes your game plan if you're Sikeston. So they're a team that can cause them some problems. I'm not saying they're going to win that game, but I'm saying they can cause them some problems. But I think Notre Dame's a team that's going to be really good, and I think Jackson too with Cole Deck. I mean, he's a really good player. They've always got such size and which is always a problem for a lot of teams. So those two teams, and then of course Cape Central. Who knows what you have with Cape Central? Mm-hmm. I mean, they're kind of an unknown right now. You have
new coach,
right? Lamont Frazier, the new coach there. He's saying that they're going to play a style of a pace of basketball that we haven't seen. And I'm thinking, okay, so are we going to slow it down? Are we going to score about 25 a game? Is that what we're doing? Because we see a lot of up tempo stuff. So we'll see what kind of basketball that they play. That'll be interesting. They're both Cape Central and Sikeston are in the DeSoto tournament this week. So it'll be kind of interesting. They may end up seeing each other in that. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how those teams pan out.
To me, Sikeston is clearly favored. At the same time, I feel like, I don't know, any of these top four teams could take this, and I didn't feel that way last year. I felt like it was pretty clear that Sikeston and New Madrid County were the two teams that were going to meet in the finals. Obviously they did, and Sikeston swept that whole tournament. This year, it's once again, Sikeston's clearly favored, but I feel like anybody in that top four could take it.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me to see Sikeston get knocked off in any of these games. Losing Dontrez Williams, that's a big loss. I mean, that's 20-plus points a game. And even more importantly is the rebounding that he brought. And you've got to replace that rebounding. And where do you find that at? Because you're not bringing in a 6'3", 6'4" guy that's, replacing that. So, you've got to find some rebounding. But so Sykeston could have some issues, but I mean, I think they are the clear favorite. Playing at home, they play so well in the field house.
Yeah.
They play different in the field house than they do. They just feed off the crowd and they shoot it so well. The backdrop there, some teams struggle with that backdrop. But when you get into the championship nights, you play there 2 or 3 times. But that first game or two, it's really tough because the backdrops is just a little bit different than what you see in a lot of courts and stuff.
It's a different atmosphere. I think too for Sykeston, like talking to kind of roll it back to that Vianney game, Sykeston was playing against a team that was very physical. They got hot, obviously, but then they were physical. They talked trash the whole time. And also you're far from home at that point. I feel like that's the way to beat Sykeston is to kind of put them out in the cold. And because their expectations for themselves are clearly high, obviously. But once you kind of like chip that armor away, I feel like they kind of fall apart a little bit. It's going to be harder for these teams like going into the SEMO conference to do that. I do think it's possible though.
Yeah, and one thing Sykeston's done this year is that they've kind of beefed up their schedule a little bit. They're going to play Father Tolton again, but they're also playing Principia, who's going to be really good this year. They're playing Callaway County, I think, over in Kentucky. They're playing some other teams that are really good, and so I think they're kind of trying to build that toughness up this year a little bit more, and so that's something. But like you said, in the field house, they're very comfortable, and it's there every year, and I live in Sykeston, so it's great for me because, it's 5 minutes from my house. But at the same time, if I'm some of these other teams, I'm like, hey, we can move this around if you'd like, just to give everybody else kind of a shot at it, kind of like they do the girls where they kind of move it around a little bit. But Sykeston has done very well in this tournament over the years, and I think they're the clear favorite this year. But again, like you said, any of these teams any of the top 4 teams I think could pull an upset there.
Personal bias, I would like it to not move ever. I love Sykeston as a venue. It is so accessible, and the amount of people you can get in the building. Like I know sometimes they have to close the doors just because hey, too many people are coming in, but at the same time, you're never going to get that atmosphere anywhere else, especially these smaller schools. Maybe Cape Central, maybe I'd hazard to say New Madrid, but, everywhere else is just kind of, it's all right.
Yeah.
But Sykeston brings a different atmosphere.
I would be fine at Sykeston or Dexter. I think they're both big enough to have it, but, do not, Cape Central, do not let it be a Cape Central with those orange walls. And, let's keep it in Sykeston. I'm fine with that. But it is a great place to watch a game. It's one of the, obviously, I think it and Dexter are the 2 best places to watch a basketball game in Southeast Missouri because you can have a lot of people in there. You can have a good atmosphere, but it doesn't feel like you're just overwhelmed with people.
Yeah.
And, that's just they're just good venues to have it. So,
they feel very close to college ball in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. I really, and I really like the way that, the field house looks after they've kind of redone it in the last couple of years. It just really sharp too. So, it's a great place to watch a basketball game.
So not to sound too scattered, let's track back to kind of your favorites for this season. Who are you really looking at team-wise? Let's start small schools first and then move up to big schools. So for class 1 through 3, who are some teams that you're really on the lookout for?
I'll just go class 1. Risco and Richland, like I said, those are the 2 teams I think in class 1. I think they're on a collision course. And I think either one of them could make some noise in class 1 because, could it be that, this is Risco's year? Sammy Smith, he's a heck of a player for Risco. And man, I would love for Coach Blankenship to make a run to the Final Four. He's gotten so close, and he has had some really good teams that have ran into an Otto Porter and just some unreal teams too. I would love for him to get a chance to go to a Final Four, and Richland as well. Coach Klein, he's had some good teams at Scott Central and at Richland as well, and it'd be nice to see them in the Final Four. And they returned everybody, all their starters from last year, and like I said, they've got some younger players that are coming up. So in class 1, that's who I like, and man, in class 2, just take your pick. But I think Puxico right now is probably the
clear favorite.
The clear favorite. I don't know, maybe not clear favorite, but favorite. I think South Pemiscot, with returning all 5 starters, they kind of flew under the radar last year. I think they're still kind of flying under the radar. They made the Final Four, and they're still kind of.
See, I keep hearing speculation, and so take speculation as speculation. And it might be coming from people from Puxico too. So also take that with a grain of salt. That South Pem's looking a little bit rougher this year than they did last year. I don't know if any of that's true because, like, the track record I've seen is that they're probably just going to be just as good as they were last year.
Well, South Pim didn't look great at the beginning of the year last year either. Oh. And you know, Coach McGowan, and again, it's not how you look in November and December. It's how you look in February and March. And you know, Coach McGowan had them rolling at the end of the year last year, and he's a really good coach. I would not put anything past him and have them rolling come district time again. He's somebody that I think would definitely have his team peaking at the right time. You know. So, you know, but, you know, Puxco, and honestly, I look at Charleston in there. Charleston's a team that I'm anxious to see how they look in this district again. You know, they're probably going to come in there with a losing record in the district, but, you know, does their tough schedule prepare them enough to beat to beat a Puxco? And all you got to do is win one night. You don't have to win an entire series like you do in the NBA. It's just one night you've got to win. And, you know, so those are the ones I'm looking at in Class 2. And then in Class 3, honestly, I'm looking at Scott City and Woodland in that Class 3 District 2. I think they're both really good teams. Scott City, man, they've got a lot back. You know, you said that they had a really good game the other night, and they were missing Jackson Gloth, who's one of their bigger players. Mm-hmm. So, you know, when they get healthy, I mean, they could be really, really good. And then Class 3 District 1, I mean, I guess East Prairie, I mean, they returned three starters this year. It's just they've never been there before. Yeah. And so it's kind of, okay, how are you going to look? You may be one of the favorites. I think them and Crowsville will be the favorites. How are you going to look?
That's kind of just looking at this like class breakdown too. Like that's where I'm at is, you know, everybody else, I mean, they might be okay, but you know, everybody else is kind of down right now. I don't know where Portageville's at all.
Yeah, I think they're down a little bit this year. You know, Kelly lost a lot off that team last year, and you know, New Matter, we kind of seen that, you know, they may be a lot, New Matter may be a lot better come district time, and who knows, maybe they're a team that can pull an upset, but right now they're just very young, making a lot of young mistakes, and that's something that Coach Jenkins is going to have to take care of. But I mean, East Prairie, man, I mean, this is just a spot that they really have never been in, and the time I've been around is a favorite maybe to win the district title. Yeah,
and I think you got to own it too. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't just be surprised that you're getting this much traction going. You've really got to just, you know, admit to yourself that you are who you say you are, because that's how you win games at that point. Bring in that confidence, bring in that swagger. Don't buy in, like don't oversell, but just, you know, play your game. And I feel like that's where East Prairie trips on its own shoelaces sometimes. You saw that at Bloomfield Christmas tournament. I mean, they weren't expecting to get there, so they didn't play like it. But it's like, no, just play like you belong, and that's how you win.
Yeah, and this team will. I mean, this team, like I said, should be the you know, like one of the favorites in that district, and you just got to go out and show it every night. You can't just not not show up. But yeah, the Scott Miss Conference with East Prairie and Scott City, that's going to be a pretty good gauge too of how these teams are looking in Class 3. Because that's they're kind of on a collision course there, it looks like, for maybe that Scott Miss title too. So that's East Prairie and Scott City, they're teams that you don't talk about a lot when it comes to basketball.
And they fly under the radar for sure.
And but this year they're kind of looking in, and a team that kind of sneaking in there. They're kind of down this year, but Coach Scott does a great job with Saxony Lutheran. I mean, he's a new, did a great job with Jackson. Now he's at Saxony. I mean, he's somebody that I think could really benefit that program. And I think, if not this year, I think in the next couple of years, that's a team that you're really going to have to watch out for in Class 3.
Let's touch on the narrative right now, because it's building in my mind about New Madrid. So, coming off a Class 3 state title too, I feel like there's a lot of expectation that's on New Madrid, and I think people are going to be disappointed that they're not getting the high-flying offense and defense that they're expecting from last year, which obviously there's a reason for that. You lost, kind of your three key pieces of that offense and defense, but you're bringing in these vaunted freshmen that I've been hearing so much about. And I don't think their performance was bad at all, but I feel like it was lacking to what people wanted it to be.
Yeah, but I mean, I think people have to be realistic too. I mean, you just lost some generational guys with Jadis Jones, B.J. Williamson, A.J. Ruff. Those guys were around for 4 years, just like some of these guys are going to be around for 4 years. You got to give them time. You got to give these new guys time to develop. You've got to give them, time to get used to playing. I mean, it's a lot different going from 8th grade basketball to playing West Memphis. I mean, that's a huge step up in competition, and that's just not, what you're used to. And plus, New Madrid was missing a couple players. Raymond Brooks, I'm like, well, you put him back on the floor. He's their best player.
He's a tempo changer for sure.
He's their best player right now. And I mean, you need him on the floor, and you got some other guys that are going to help too, that are going to, fit into this mix here in the next, month or two. So I'm like, we weren't seeing their full team either. So I think you just got to be patient with New Madrid, and it's. I mean, honestly, it would not shock me if they were to win the district. It would not shock me. I mean, that's something that, because one thing I've noticed over all these years is freshmen develop quick, and once they kind of get that confidence, and you could see it. You could see some of the freshmen they would get the ball and they're immediate. It's like a hot potato. They're ready to pass it to someone else. By the end of the year, those guys are going to have a little more confidence. They're going to catch the ball. They're going to be ready to shoot the ball. And maybe make, and you start making some shots, it changes everything, your confidence and everything. And once they get some wins and stuff, it's just like in football, whenever, New Madrid started out 0-4, well, all of a sudden you got to win, and all of a sudden they start rolling because you get some confidence behind you. And I think that'll come with basketball as well. It's just young, and you just got to develop these guys, and I think they're going to be fine.
Yeah. I think that was great for the Riverbend, just to kind of like, that was obviously the narrative I was looking at the entire time, was how is New Madrid going to do? Because I've been hearing about their freshmen, things like that. And, the whole time I was watching these games, I had people in my ear, former players, saying, New Madrid's just trying to do too much right now. And, I think for Coach Jenkins especially, like, he's probably going in with the same mindset of, I have to temper this. I have to make it into the team that I'm looking for. And so, what I saw, especially out of Williams, I saw shades of BJ Williamson out of him. Just that aggressive play style, very confident, was not afraid to just throw himself into every play that he could. And yeah, like you said, take that into next year. Even build it up this year. Who knows where you're going to be in February, honestly. But you take that next year. I mean, I don't want to talk about dynasties keeping it going, but that's one that I could see keeping it going if they really wanted to.
Yeah, and there's no reason. I mean, there's a lot of talent. There's some talent in their 8th grade group. There's there's a lot of talent New Madrid basketball wise, and you talk about Jalen Williams. Yeah, he looks really good. He looks really good at times, taking the ball to the basket. He's got some confidence to shoot it, but he also didn't handle some double teams correctly. He also missed some passes that he should, and those are all teaching things that Coach Jenkins is going to work with. There was a couple timeouts that he Coach Jenkins would call timeout. He would talk directly to him. Look, you should have done this. You should have done that. It's just everything's kind of new for a freshman right now, and it's just all teaching things and just getting them to develop. And the more situations that they find themselves in, the better they're going to be in the long run. And they've got a tough schedule. They've got Scott City coming up. They've got Graves County and the Marshall County Classic next weekend. I mean, those are two tough teams that they're going to have to play before you even get to the SEMO Conference Tournament. I mean, they could very easily be 0-4 going in the SEMO Conference Tournament. And but again, you just got to keep them positive and just keep developing these guys.
Yeah, and I mean, you got to think about like what was Jadis and BJ's like first year like for them, like. Because it's got to be comparable to like expectations that are put on you, things like that.
Yeah, there were a lot of expectations, and they were a little more developed. I mean, Jadis was a little, they were kind of a little bit different because Jadis is just a different beast, and so they were a little bit better. But at the same time, you knew that they were going to be good in 3 and 4 years, and they were really good, and got some state titles and just really kind of ruled the area in Class 3 for a long time. And I think that's what New Madrid wants. But I mean, you got to be careful to compare yourself to that group. I mean, you're your own group. You've got a lot of talent, and things change too. The kind of the area around you changes a little bit, and some of the teams in your class change, and so you just got to just go out and try to play the best you can and learn the best you can. And I think Coach Jenkins is going to do a nice job with that.
We've talked about Class 3 for a long time, but what do you think about Class 4?
Not much. I mean, I think Notre Dame's, going to be good. I think they're probably, like I said, they're probably the favorite to win Class 4 District 1. Dexter, I think Dexter's going to be better than last year, but I don't know if they can beat a Notre Dame.
Yeah, how much is that saying though?
I mean, yeah, they kind of struggled last year. They were young. I mean, and again, Dexter's developing some of these guys. And so, I like some of the Dexter players that Sepulvedo, I think is how you say his name, but he's a good player. And they've got some other guys that are really good players as well. I think that, like I said, I think they'll be better. And I don't think they're going to be a pushover in that district. But I'm like, when you're Notre Dame and you return, basically your entire roster from last year. I think they had one senior. You return your entire roster and you add Will Henry Stewart, who was hurt most of last year. I mean, that's a good team. And so that's a team that you're going to have to knock off. I think they're clearly the team to beat in that district.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, like my own personal history, like I always remember like going to games, like seeing Notre Dame just be that dominant team that you just couldn't get past. And so for them to return to Class 4 to play against Dexter, I mean, those are some games I'm going to probably be living some flashbacks watching my brother play them. So, for me, Class 4 it's there. That's it. I mean, like you said, Notre Dame is the standout, but everybody else is just, you're also in the class. Good for you.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those, and there's not a local teams in that Class 4 either. I mean, we got Dexter, Donovan, Kennett, Notre Dame. I mean,
kind of feels like Class 4 in football.
Yeah, just where there's just not a lot of eyes going to be on that, just because there's not a lot of local teams. Because you go to Class 5, you're going to have your Cape Central, Sykeston, and Poplar Bluff, but they're kind of their teams are grabbing most of the headlines around here this year. So that's going to have a little more, some more eyes on it. I think Notre Dame again is going to kind of fly under the radar a little bit this year, but I think they're going to be a good team, and so we'll see in the long run.
Speculation over Class 5. I mean, of course, District 1, you talked about Cape Central, the names that all pop out to us, Cape Central, Sykeston, Poplar Bluff. District 2, I mean, honestly, it looks a little interesting to me too. I mean, St. Mary's, I always feel like St. Mary's is a consistently good team, and then Vianney's in there too, Lutheran South.
Webster Groves is also going to be really good. That's a brutal district. But you go back to Sykeston's district, a lot of people are looking past Farmington. Farmington's going to be really good this year, and the district's going to be at Farmington. I talked to Coach Hollifield yesterday, and he was talking about how good Farmington's going to be. I mean, Sykeston really struggled with them last year, and Sykeston's going to have to play them at Farmington in the regular season, and then play them in the district at Farmington. And that's a team that could really be. I mean, they returned pretty much everybody from last year. That's a team that's going to really. I mean, you talk about flying under the radar. Nobody's mentioning them in that Class 5 District 1, and they're going to be good. And so, I know Sykeston's not looking past them at all. But, that Class 5 District 2, Class 5 is just loaded all around.
Yeah, I know for SEMO, small town schools, that's like bread and butter. Everybody's interested in that. But Class 5, to me, that's the one I want to watch the most.
Yeah, Class 5 is just loaded. That District 2, you've got St. Mary's, who's going to be really good. Sykeston will play them this year in the regular season. Of course, Vianney, who beat Sykeston last year, they return a lot. They lost a 7'3" kid, but I've heard they've got another 7-footer to replace him with. Webster Groves
good teams reload.
Yeah, Webster Groves is really good. Then other teams, John Burroughs has a 6'10" and a 6'11" guy on their roster. Principia's got, I think, a 7-footer that's in there. Hazelwood East is, Sykeston played them in the Jamboree, and Hazelwood East kind of handled them a little bit. They're in Class 5. I mean, Class 5 is loaded this year with some really, really good teams.
It's just a different animal.
Yeah, so if Sykeston were to win a state title or that would be a huge feat for them, I think, because there are so many good teams in Class 5 this year. And I think, Sykeston's just looking at districts right now. They want to make sure they try to get out of districts. If you do, you get to host that quarterfinal game, which will be a huge benefit for Sykeston. But you got to get out of that district first. And that district is going to be a lot tougher than what people think.
Yeah. And I mean, like considering Class 6 too, just really quick. I mean, Jackson's the only one I could really pick out of there that I'm just like, well, that's the team I know, of course. What do you think they're going to perform like?
Jackson basketball is Cape Central football, because Cape Central, you get your district out and you look and see, and like top of that list is Cardinal Ritter.
Yeah.
So, Jackson gets out the basketball district and they look, and the first thing they see is Cardinal Ritter. And Cardinal Ritter basketball is just like Cardinal Ritter in football. They're good. And so Jackson's got their work cut out for them. There's some other teams there that are pretty good, but Jackson, I think, can be competitive with all those other teams. Cardinal Ritter, though, I think is clearly the favorite in that Class 6. But you get to Class 6 and good luck. I mean, there are just some really, really good teams up around St. Louis. So even if you do get out of districts, man, you got a lot of good teams up there and a lot of athletic teams with a lot of D1 talent. And I don't know if Jackson's going to be as good as they were last year. Koldeck is a really, really good player, but he had a lot of help around him last year. This year, I mean, there's still some good players there, but not to the level they had last year.
Yeah, I feel like Jackson's always had kind of the issue of, kind of the opposite to what they have in football. And correct me if I'm wrong. This is just my own speculation. I always feel like Cape Central gets a lot more recognition in basketball than Jackson does in basketball. But that's just kind of what I see over the past couple of years.
Yeah, that's definitely true because, Jackson being in Class 6, it's like, well, if Jackson gets out of a district, that's great. But it's really, really their teams are not going to match up with some of the better teams in Class 6. I'm like, if you win a district title, it's a success, and then you just go into districts, and any game you win in that is just a cherry on top. Mm-hmm. I think it's kind of the way basketball is. Plus, Jackson they're a football school. I mean, let's be honest, they're a football school. But Jackson has some really good basketball teams, and they're a team that's going to have to be dealt with in the SEMO conference for sure. But I think once they get into district play, and if they were, I think once they get to Cardinal Ritter, I think they're definitely going to be an underdog in that game. And I think if you are to win that, you're still going to be an underdog going into your thing. So I don't think people are looking at Jackson like, oh, they're going to win a state title in basketball. So I think that's kind of why they kind of fly under the radar a little bit. But, Cape Central, you always think Cape Central's got some of the talent that they could possibly do it. It's just, they just never do.
Yeah. I feel like the expectations for basketball are so much different than they are for football in this area, because I always hear about who's going to make a run. And it's just so like way out there. Like, really, you think these teams are going to make runs? Like, we've barely even started the season. But I think that expectation is put on a lot of these schools. Sykeston's favored to make a run. I even think Cape Central's like slightly favored to make a run. But Jackson, like you said, if they win anything in their district, I mean, it's
a huge success.
Let's go.
I mean, I blame Ronnie Cookson. I blame Linus McFerrin. I blame, Jim Bidewell, because 80s, 90s, they ran this state.
You brought too much excellence to our area.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, they ran this state. And, I mean, you're going up there winning state titles every year. I mean, and then you had other good teams, Malden in the 80s, New Matter in the 80s winning state titles. And you got New Matter going in the late 90s, early 2000s winning state titles. And, again, you've always just got teams from around here that are going up and winning state titles. You've just had so much success. But those three coaches brought a lot of success and a lot of state titles to the area. And now this area just expects it. I'm like, you expect if you've got a good team, well, you're obviously going to get up there and you're going to win a state title. And if you don't, it's sometimes deemed as a failure when really it's not. I mean, I know that, Sykeston gets a lot of heat sometimes because, they only have one state title. It's not easy to win a state title.
No.
It's not. And these are, especially as you get into the bigger classes too. I mean, these are teams with a lot of D1 kids and kids that have a lot of talent, and you've got to play well every single night, and just a little slip and you lose. I mean, it's not easy winning state titles, but fans expect it.
Yeah. And I mean, consider this. I mean, like you said, Sykeston, like, they play lights out every season. Well, head and shoulders above anybody they're in, like, competition wise. But it's just always going to be that narrative of like, well, they can't win the big one. And that sucks.
Yeah. And it's not fair. I mean, it's really not fair because they've ran into some really, really good teams over the years. And I've seen a lot of them. Borgia for the longest time. I mean, they had a team that just, kind of like the Vianney was last year, that just shot it so well and handled the ball so well. You couldn't get them to turn it over. And there's good team. Vashon. How many times has Vashon been in the way of a Sykeston or a Charleston or, and it's just, New Matter there for a while too. It's just, there's always good teams around the state that you got to beat, and it's not easy. And, it is easy when you have an Otto Porter in Class 1. An NBA player on a first round draft pick on a Class 1 basketball team in Missouri, you're gonna roll on some state titles. You're gonna win some, but not all teams have that. And it's only been around, it's only happened a couple of times around here. Poplar Bluff, they kind of ruled, Class 5, I guess at the time. They had a Tyler Hansborough, who was a college player of the year and an NBA player. And I'm like, yeah, you're going to be darn good when you have those, but you don't always have those. So these teams that are making these runs, it's not easy winning these state titles, and people should realize that. I think it's not easy.
Yeah, and especially for small schools. I mean, I'm not going to take anything away from your town that you did good. But when you're a big fish in a small pond, I don't know what your expectations are.
Yeah, and it's bad because I've seen some teams. We mentioned the Dexter team back. I mentioned them back in the early 2000s. They were really, really good. A lot of people were talking state title. Dexter's never challenged for a state title, honestly. They made one Final Four in my lifetime. And really then they matched up with Vashon in a semifinal, and good luck with that. Mm-hmm. I mean, but and so you just don't. It's just not something it happens very often. But then the fans are upset when you don't get out of districts and you don't get a state title, and it's just tough. It's tough to make fans happy, and it's just but again, it's just really hard to win a state title. But these teams around here, tend to do it more often than not.
Yeah, it's definitely build up an expectation for excellence. And you know what? Honestly, for competition wise, it's probably good for the game. Fans hating each other wise. I mean, hey, take your rivalries where you can get them. You've got tournaments to sort that out. And then in districts, hey, you know what? Win your chip and then go home. I mean, do it again next year if you can. But
yeah, and it's fun to watch these fans banter back and forth, especially some of the fans that when you get some of the move-ins too that happen from school to school, and that just adds to the rivalries as well. It's fun watching the banter back and forth with their some of the craziness that goes on.
Yeah, and we've already seen some of that this year. So, I mean, it's going to be a fun season regardless. I'm looking forward to it. As stressful as basketball gets on the production side of things, the more ingrained I am into it, the more excited. Just like, wait, that's going to happen? They're going to play them? Oh, that's going to be sick. Things like that.
Yeah, there's some really good games coming up on the schedule, and just starting off with like you said, you guys are doing the Oran tournament this week. Just look at that tournament. I mean, 3-4 years ago, Scott Central, Oran, and Advance are the class of that tournament, and now they're the bottom 3 seeds. You got Bell City and Chaffee is a couple of the top seeds in that tournament. I'm like, what's going on? I mean, it's like. And it's kind of just neat how some things kind of flip, and you're like, okay, well, maybe this team's going to be good this year, or maybe they got the seeds completely wrong. But it's just it's getting started now, and it's very interesting to see this first few weeks how these teams kind of look out of the gate and what we might be seeing down the line.
Yeah, and it's a nice opportunity for us to kind of shine a spotlight on some of these smaller town teams too, because everybody deserves recognition, and I think this is a good opportunity for it.
Yeah, and I promise you, these kids love playing on A Corp and stuff where they're seen by a lot of different people, and they're well aware that they're on camera, and they're being the games are being shown, and it's also good for because a lot of areas don't have this where you're able to put these games where people can see them and everybody can see them, and people love that, and it just draws a lot more eyes to the sport, and just draws a lot more people to listen to stuff like us, because I mean, if you don't know a lot about the teams, well, you're not going to be listening to many podcasts about it or whatever. And it's just Southeast Missouri and basketball is it's a hotbed for basketball. I've said it many, many times, and you can talk about your basketball or your football here and football there, but basketball is king here in Southeast Missouri, and you can just see it every night when you go to a gym and it's packed.
Yeah, and I'm sure later in the season we're going to hear more opinions brought up, and we're going to have to silently answer some things. But to me, for us at this point, like what our expectations are for this show, everything we do is, it's all about the athletes at the end of the day. It's giving them the chance to, perform in a way that they want to be seen. And like you said, not a lot of places have an avenue like this. The AD from New Madrid stopped me and said, hey, this team from even Arkansas wants, if you could send over the pictures you guys took to them, they'd really appreciate it. And it's just like, of course we'll do that, because, at the end of the day, like we're here to further schools and, education wise, everything like that, just shine a spotlight on, the things that we love about them. And when it comes to athletics, in this area, basketball is the bread and butter, and we want to make an entertaining product out of that. That's the goal. But to shine a spotlight on the athletes and the schools that bring it to us, I mean, that's probably the biggest thing we could do.
Yeah, and people love it. And, you can just see it on your number of views. And and just people talking about it. And you hear, my area over in Sykeston, you hear people talk about it all the time, and the games they get to see, teams that they maybe normally wouldn't watch, that, they come home after their game and turn it on. Well, who's on tonight? And they look and see that and watch a little bit of that game, watch it at work. I've been known to watch a few games at work while I'm doing my other stuff. So, it's just a great benefit for the area. And man, Sykeston, is going to be the epicenter of some really good basketball that you guys are going to be doing here in a couple weeks. And, that will get a lot of eyes because a lot of people are anxious to see the SEMO Conference tournament kick off.
Oh, I can't wait for it either. That's probably my personal favorite tournament of the year. It's heads and tails, like it just looks like a college tournament to me. So when we get the chance to just really blow that up and make it look like the event it is, I'm always jazzed about that.
Yeah, it's a great tournament, and to me, it's the number 2 tournament. I like my favorite has always been the Bloomfield Christmas tournament, and as we get closer to that, I will have a rant about how much I love that tournament and can't stand maybe another tournament around the area. But that's 2 of the best tournaments, and not just in the area, but in the entire state. 2 of the best tournaments in the state, I think, just because of the amount of attention brought to it and the talent that you have, and you're not shipping in talent from outside the state.
Right.
It's schools that have an interest inside your community and draw such a crowd and such so many eyes. It's just a really fun. Just again, 2 of the better tournaments in the state. No,
we are incredibly fortunate to have the opportunity to broadcast those, and for all the smaller schools that feel like they don't get attention, we see you. We one of our greatest detriments is that we can't be everywhere at once. But if we could, we would obviously try our best to do every game we possibly could. But for what we got, I think we're really trying to just bring the best thing possible to the area.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of these smaller schools, we'd love you'd love to have them on, but it's like there's just so many. There's like, I think at one time I counted like 70 schools, I think in Southeast Missouri or something, and in the area. I don't know if that's how accurate that number is, depending on where you determine where Southeast Missouri is, but it's a lot of schools.
Yeah, it's a daunting prospect, even considering where we're going to put our notes and how we're going to do that. It changes a lot when it goes from 15 schools in our coverage to around 70.
Yeah. Basketball is a whole different beast with trying to keep up with a lot of this. So if we miss a game or 2 that we don't comment on, sometimes just kind of give us a break. There's a lot of games going on.
A lot to talk about.
Yeah.
But we will be bringing it all to you in the coming weeks. We're so excited for it. That's been the SEMO Sports Zone. We thank you for watching, and as always, who's got it better than us? Nobody.